My comrades and friends, as I end my salutations, I feel greatly honored to be here today on this occasion at which Zimbabwe joins the rest of the world in commemorating the International Day to End Impunity for Crimes Against Journalists. Indeed, the world, as does Zimbabwe, recognizes that impunity of crimes against journalists and against journalistic practice in general constitutes an assault on the profession and hamstrings the ability of the state and society to self-introspect objectively and transparently. As such, together with the rest of the interlocutors in attendance, I have taken a moment so that we can reflect on this all very important day matter together. Ladies and gentlemen, the Second Republic has consistently steered clear from infringing on the rights of journalists, thus upholding the sanctity of the vulnerable fourth estate. This commitment, which includes the need to provide effective legal recourse in instances where infractions have been reported by journalists, doubles down on His Excellency the President, Comrade E.D. Mnangagwa's pledge to make Zimbabwe open for business. That's his mantra. When he was inaugurated, he coined this mantra: Zimbabwe is open for business. He's on record to say we should not leave anybody behind. He's on record to say everyone is important in this country. He's on record to say, bring your ideas on the table, let's debate them and see and build a Zimbabwe we all want. Impunity denotes asymmetrical power relations between perpetrator and victim. It also implies that those whose responsibility is to act on behalf of the victims renege on their mandate. It ought not to be so. In instances where violence has been directed at journalists, the state is always standing as an arbiter in defense of the media fraternity, whose vocation often attracts ill will from those whose conduct and methods cannot withstand scrutiny. Impunity for any crime is an aberration in any democracy. I dare say impunity for crimes against journalists is far more grievous as it seeks to silence the voices that keep in check society's excesses. And we need journalists so that we keep out these excesses. Ladies and gentlemen, Zimbabwe is renowned for its peace, harmony, and stability. So when we hear reports of intimidation of journalists and harassment, they greatly impact on our work as government, especially now when we are seized with our government and our engagement and re-engagement efforts. The media is our business, and I said this in the beginning. You are our business. While mass communication is the heart and soul of my ministry, and as such, we get worried when reports of violence against the media emerge. Let me assure you that as government, we are in this fight together to end impunity for crimes against journalists. Let me pay tribute to the organizers for putting together this event and to remind each other to create an environment that promotes innovation and creativity among journalists and not one that stifles and suffocates them. The ministry, ladies and gentlemen, superintends 5 pieces of legislation. That is the Freedom of Information Act 2020, the Broadcasting Services Act, Chapter 12.06, Act Number 4 of 2001, Zimbabwe Broadcasting Corporation Commercialization Act Number 26, 2001, Zimbabwe Broadcasting Corporation Data Assumption Act 2004, Zimbabwe Media Commission Act, Chapter 10.35. The proposed Zimbabwe Media Practitioners Bill is yet to be finalized. It is against this background that I want to reaffirm government's commitment to ensuring a safe operating environment for the media and the adherence to the constitutional provisions guaranteeing freedom of expression freedom of the media, access to information, and the right to privacy. I speak with passion because this is something which we fought for. We all know that before independence, there was no one man, one vote in this country. The black majority of this country never knew what was voting. They never knew who their leaders were. I was there in Chimanimani going to school. And it is that generation, I call it the Samora Machel generation, with our forefathers who had always continued to fight to say we need fairness we need democracy, democratic space among ourselves. And as young generation, we gave up our life. And we didn't give up our life so that it's good for an individual, for war veterans, but we did that to provide opportunities to each and every Zimbabwean without looking at color, creed, or tribe. So these are issues which, if we carry it out to its conclusion, it makes all those who died in the war, those who don't even have graves, happy, because that's what they died for. One of the key pillars, ladies and gentlemen, of Vision 2030 is to grow the media sector and support it as a viable industry that creates jobs and competes on the international arena. This is precisely the reason we don't tolerate any forms of violence against journalists. We have listened to the voices of reason in the media and immediately set off to reform the media laws and policy framework. As part of its law reform agenda, this administration repealed the dreaded Access to Information and Protection Privacy Act, IPA, giving birth to Freedom of Information Act, as alluded to earlier. This represents a major shift of the Second Republic as one that is open, transparent, and supportive towards the media sector. You've seen a lot of reforms. You've seen a lot of action which the Second Republic has taken. One of them, and you've been very supportive as members of the media, is this initiative to make sure that what is debated in Parliament, in Cabinet, which was never the case before the Second Republic, we feel we are accountable to the people. We feel it's important to be transparent. We feel the people of this country need to know what their cabinet is discussing about. And we feel it is important to get feedback from the people of this country. This is why every Tuesday, timelessly, we give you back the post-cabinet briefing. So, as part, this represents a major shift of the Second Republic as one that is open, transparent, and supportive towards the media sector. We sought to remove anything that hindered journalists to execute their duties freely. We are fully aware that a lot more still needs to be done, and we will do it. My office is open to all journalists, public or private. Journalists of Zimbabwe are journalists of Zimbabwe, and I treat them as such, because we are all there together to rebrand this country. And as I always say, the impressions built about Zimbabwe out there is made up of what we write with our pen and now with our phones on the social media. So this is our job, to do it together. And as a Ministry of Information, Publicity and Broadcasting Services, we are ready to get constructive criticism. Because when we're sitting in that ministry, me and my deputy and my officers, it doesn't mean we are the only experts or we are the experts in this media. You are out there. And if you don't bring your ideas on the table, it means those ideas will just fizzle out without being implemented. So this is why stakeholder consultations is a very important thing in my ministry as I head this Ministry of Information. We have gone further to open the airwaves, to allow diverse voices in this sector. We have licensed 6 private commercial television stations in what we believe will broaden the broadcasting industry and further spur government's development agenda to be an upper middle income society in 9 years. And I must say, the media has been playing that critical role, because the people of Zimbabwe need to know what is happening in their country, what is happening in their communities. There's the devolution, which has always been talk show before in the First Republic. But the government has put money to make sure that each and every Zimbabwean, wherever you are, you play an active role, not just in the social, but also in the economic activities of this country. So the thrust of the Second Republic, under the astute leadership of His Excellency President Dr. E.D. Mnangagwa, is anchored on consultation and engagement with all relevant stakeholders on all issues around the democratic regulation of the media sector. And this is what I've always told the media. Let's not always live in the past. The Deputy Minister talked about the fact that I was the Deputy Minister of Information. I was in his position during the First Republic when Jonathan Moyo was heading this ministry. And I know how some journalists felt. I know how some journalists were scared even to walk into the Ministry of Information. And I know how you journalists would not express yourself freely. And we are saying in the Second Republic, you are free and my doors are open. The ministry is there for you. We need to move together. And once again, I want to say, as long as it's constructive criticisms, my officers, my deputy minister, we all know that we'll put attention to see what is coming out of this. To this end, there are many things which we've done. We have also licensed 14 community radio stations and 7 campus radio stations as we set up efforts to further diversify the media sector so that no one and no place is left behind. The diversity is in terms of ownership, languages, culture, and editorial thrust of these community and campus broadcasters. Ladies and gentlemen, Zimbabwe is one of the countries that have made criminal defamation unconstitutional. And the government continues to affirm the position that journalism is not a crime. And we are firm believers of the media's developmental role. The ministry notes some disturbing reports that have emerged from media practitioners on duty who have either been harassed or threatened by law enforcement agencies, and in some instances, some elements within political parties. I always say, as good citizens, we are all under the law of this country. This country has got laws. This country has got a supreme law, the Constitution, which we all have to abide with. We need to adhere to what is enshrined in that Constitution. So no one is above the law. When you do your work within the laws, that should be respected. As we commemorate this day today, I want to assure all of you that the government does not condone any acts of violence perpetrated on journalists. Media workers, journalists in particular, should be allowed the freedom to do their work as dictated by that Constitution, which is ours. It was endorsed in 2013. It was a people-driven constitution. We went out on an outreach. I was actually part of that 25 members of the Constitution of COPAC. I was the co-vice chair during that time. I heard the voices of the people of the Zimbabwe talking. And so, as government, we condemn any forms of illegality and violence targeted at journalists and urge the media to use existing channels within the confines of the law to ensure such cases are investigated and perpetrators brought to book. Aikona ngochema uri pa one place kuti azvazodai kana kutaura pa social media kana. When you are confronted with a situation which needs the existing channels to deal with it, to investigate, please make a report. The structures are well defined. And we are saying at the ministry, whenever it's journalists, I don't know how many times my PS, has always received calls from journalists. And where we can help, we've quickly helped. We work very closely with the Assistant Commissioner right here. So we are there. Don't rush to twittering, writing on social media without giving information which will make the agents to successfully investigate. It is critical. It has to be investigated. The same applies to reports of violence against female journalists. Again, this is very close to my heart. And this should never be tolerated. And all efforts must be made to ensure women feel comfortable to practice their trade. And like my deputy minister earlier on said, we know women are good. And I'm happy to say during my stint the last 3 years as the Minister of Information, we have had quite a number of women who have gone up the ladder as editors. And we need more of them, certainly. They are there, they are good. No government can leave behind 52% of their population. The issues of gender equality are no longer issues of just human rights. They are issues of development. They are developmental issues, economic issues. So we are saying on merit, and they are there. We need more of them. Government has been encouraging media houses to have gender policies and safety mechanisms for female journalists, including against sexual harassment. Young girls should feel very comfortable in this profession. Young girls have fought for the independence of this country. Young girls together on side by side with their male colleagues, they fought. When we ask for women empowerment in this country, we are not asking for charity. We aimed it. The women of this country have always been there. Buyane in 1890s. Her place was not in the kitchen. She was a war strategist. So women in this country have demonstrated that they are good. So let's deal with them as such. Having said that, ladies and gentlemen, let me add, and as you go about your work, please desist from the act of provoking law enforcement agencies, as they will also be executing their duties. And I repeat, please desist from the act of provoking law enforcement agencies, because law enforcement agencies are there to execute their duties. We all need to respect the laws of the land, and as members of the Fourth Estate, we hold you in high esteem and expect you to abide by that constitution. As government, we've taken note of recommendations of Article 19 that calls for necessary measures to be taken to guarantee the safety and security of all journalists. Also, to make sure that we ensure that in cases of violations, investigations are carried and perpetrators held accountable. To also ensure there are reparations for victims of such violence for law enforcement officers, including adequate compensation. And to ensure the requirement for accreditation is never misused to prevent journalists from reporting. I want to thank you all for your attention, and I look forward to fruitful deliberations. It will be interesting for the ministry and for my office in particular to know the recommendations and the way forward. I thank you sincerely for inviting me. Thank you.